Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. Now we come to an episode that does shake up the status quo a little bit, and this is a shake up that continues on throughout the remainder of the show, although there is a little hiatus in the next season due to something that happens with Robert. Of course, this is the episode where Robert finally moves out of his parents' house. Now, according to series lore before this, the only time he had ever moved out of his house was when he was married to Joanne, which, funny enough, is another little thing we find out about the end of it at the end of the next season. So, nice little season 4 segue there. And of course, that episode takes place after he's fully recovered from the incident that causes him to move back in with his parents. And they do bring up him moving out before in this episode because it's how Frank and Marie are. Now, episode begins with Robert and Amy babysitting the kids. Ray and Deborah come home. You know, they tease them a little bit because they walk in on them on the couch. And Robert feels a little downtrodden because he's like, I'm pathetic. I'm a grown man who has to take babysitting jobs so he can make out with his girlfriend. He storms across the street. Amy follows. And they have an off-screen conversation that we find out about the next morning because Ray brings back Robert's jacket. And then Frank brings up, I heard you both talking. And he's like, I'm not allowed to talk with people. And then we find out that Marie was spying by passing an air vent because I guess from his room to their room, the noise carries with the air vent. And of course, given how Marie is, would you be surprised if she didn't eavesdrop if she heard the conversation? She tells Robert he's not pathetic. She agrees with Amy. Frank teases a little bit. Do you call her boo-boo? And of course, Marie doing her usual coddling. Yeah, you got a spot there. Robert outbursts that he's going to move out. The two tease him a bit. And Marie says something that really stuck with me this time. I mean, this has always jumped out at me watching it, but it especially stuck with me this time watching it as a man in his early 30s. It's like, really? Him moving out is pulling a stunt? The way she spoke in her tone, which I'll say that Doris Roberts played it perfectly. I mean, who else could be cast as Marie this perfectly? The way she said it sounds like she's talking to Robert when he was 18 or something. It's like, really? Him moving out is a stunt? Last I checked, a grown man in his 40s is allowed to move out of his parents' house if he wants to, if he's there for some reason. And saying it's a stunt. And then, of course, going into the guilt tripping, which Ray's watching, and he's like, no, no. Which, moments like that, I really love in this show, where we see that even though Ray does have the golden child spot within the family, the parents do coddle him a little bit more than they coddle Robert, because he's the favorite. Even though, they're coddling Robert because he's right there. You do see the brotherly bond. I mean, in the show Brothers, we saw it. In this episode especially, we see that he's, building it up with Robert, like, you gotta move out. He even has a conversation once the parents leave about it. It's like, you gotta move out of here. I'm getting tired of telling you. I'm tired of you being miserable here, but yet you're still here. And of course, when Marie walks back in, he has to quickly cover it with the baseball analogy and then go back to it. And he finally does get through to Robert that Robert has to leave. And then Robert kind of throws him under the bus when Marie walks back in, saying, oh, thank you, Raymond. And Marie gets all mad. It was like, it's your son, Marie. If he wants to move out, he can move out. Don't get all uppity about it like this. She overreacts, and then Frank's overreaction. I didn't want him to go. Which is funny. Is like, really, Frank? You don't want to live with Marie alone? Then why did you marry her? Oh, that's right. You had to marry her. Because it was just the once, and then you had to get married. Your own words. Just, I guess, Frank being a little jokey, because he always makes those type of wife jokes. Of course, in a later episode, we find out just how much he does love Marie, when she says something that really upsets him. That's season 6, if I remember right. The one about Marie's glasses. Just the way he reacts in that one, but we'll get to that one when we get to it. Probably another year or so, depending on how often I upload these videos. Robert moves out. Ray goes to go visit him. And the place he's staying with is awfully familiar, because it is essentially a carbon copy of the Barone house. There's like subtle differences, like they're Jewish instead of Catholic. They say certain different things, like Frank says holy crap, but the husband just says holy crud. Certain aspects they say stuff I cannot imagine Marie saying or Frank saying, like, if it was a snake I'd eat it instead of that pot roast. I don't think Frank would ever say anything about Marie's cooking that way. He loves her cooking. And the actors that play these two characters, perfect. It's Anna Berger and David Byrd as Harry and Rita Stipe. And this is the first of two times we see them. In a later episode, they actually become friends with Frank and Marie, which is a plan that backfires, but we'll get to that episode when we get to them. They play it perfectly here, the comedy, and it's like, you see it, and what makes it even funnier is that Ray immediately notices that they are essentially like Frank and Marie, but Robert is so oblivious to it until Ray has to walk him through it, and Robert's talking about it, and then he's like, oh my god, this is not the radical move I had planned. Well, as Ray points out perfectly, it's like, oh, just a change, you gotta pay rent now. And of course, he's also living above a garage. Well, Robert decides he's going to move out on his own, and his whole little speech about why he decided to move out, it was all part of the plan. He was going to, save some money, meet a girl, then move out, have a life, he cuts himself off from saying it, but the implication is he wants to be like his brother in the regards that he has a better life than what he has. Instead of being alone in his room, moping about, not having anything, the never ends for Raymond type mentality, actually have a life. That if he goes back to the parents, then it's like it was nothing. Which you understand, and even after he hears it, Ray understands, because his whole plan from the beginning was to try to get Robert to come back home. Because even though he's the one that talked him into it, now that Robert's not there, Marie's coming over more, which is annoying Deborah. So, not a happy wife, not a happy life, as the phrase would go. Marie's over more, so as much as he loves his mother, there's only so much of her he can take. I mean, he's the one that didn't want to move across the street from them in the first place, and Deborah wouldn't listen to him, as we saw at the end of season 1. And of course, when he gets back and tells them the bad news, they both go off on him. Then the Stipes go off on him, same type of reaction that Frank and Marie had when Robert originally moved out. And it's like, no matter what he does in this episode, Ray cannot win. But you understand why he does it, because he loves his brother, he wants him to succeed in life. And especially after he hears his reason for why he wanted to move out, even though he cuts himself off, he understands. It's like, you wanted to be... From a writing standpoint, the comedy in this episode works perfectly. You could thank Tucker Colley for that. Perfect writing here. Character interactions, good amount of time for each one. Frank is the main Barone that doesn't have the most screen time. He's only in the episode involving the kitchen before Robert moves out, but it's logical because every other scene where we see the Barone family, other than him maybe being in the background and getting one line in, it's like, yeah, would have just been fan service for that point. Marie, the scene she's in, worked perfectly. Probably my favorite scene with her. It's one of those weird little things like, oh, you think it's that character, is when Ray comes home from work and he thinks Deborah's the one in the back doing stuff, and it's her. And she starts to massage him, and then he goes to kiss her like he would Deborah. Then he sees it's his mother, and he goes like, oh, blah, blah. Now the dreams are gonna start again. Just the way that scene's written, and the way that Doris Robert plays Marie off without even having to say anything. And of course, Ray Romano, the way he overreacts there, which Ray's performance in this one's good too. You see all the mixed emotions going through him, especially in the scene in the garage bedroom. Brad Garrett, perfect as Robert in this episode. All the mixed emotions going through him. The way he does the facial expressions when he realizes that it's not the radical change he had planned. Patricia Heaton as Deborah, you understand why she wants Robert back, even though it's not the best thing for him. It's one of those things, my sanity, his happiness. A little balance there. And with everything going forward, you're like, this is going to shake up the dynamic to a point, but the question is how extreme, because now Robert's not going to be over there, so for him to be in either house, there's got to be more of a reason. Like him going to visit his parents, okay, he's over there. Him going over to visit Ray and hang out with him, watch the game with everybody else, that'd be a reason for him to be there. Maybe him, I don't like being home alone right now, I'll go over there. As we've seen in a couple episodes in the previous seasons, like, no one was over there. But part of that probably ties into the things he has to get over, like he mentions in that speech. It's all for naught. He doesn't fully say everything, but it's like his own issues he has to get over in order to progress his life forward and, have it all. And that's about it to say about this episode. Pretty fun episode, writing spot on. Definitely would be on the upper tier of the season 3 episodes, and as we're getting to the meat part of the season, you're going to see more and more why this is my favorite season overall. And of course, in the next episode, The Article is going to be one of the first episodes of the show I watched, and has Probably one of my favorite little Frank and Marie arguments because of how nonsensical and random it is. It's gonna be like, really? That's what you're arguing over? And funny enough, it's actually the main thing about the episode I remember before I got the sets and started watching through them. Is that whole moment. Everything else I forgot. So trying to go through the entire show, trying to find this episode, I'm like, what is it? And I'm walking through and I'm like, aha, there it is. It's like that one Leo DiCaprio meme. There it is. And of course, the article, fun little one, shows a little bit of Ray's jealousy, but we'll get to that one next time. And I hope you guys enjoyed the new format for the recording because it's a new camera. My normal one I normally recorded with is right here. I'm recording with my new webcam here. If you saw my little Q&A video with John, the Zero Cool, you already saw the thing. But this one's cool, especially since it has a light setup. See? So if I'm recording in the dark and don't want to do that, the only problem with that is if I have it on the bright one, I got to be careful looking at the camera. So if the light's on and you see me looking off camera in the future videos, that's going to be why.